And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Welcome, everyone, to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design, and with me, and he's really here, is my co-host, Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matt.
Welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens which are sustainable and low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen.
That's right. And can you believe it is May already? Although
No.
I know, but some of us feel like, oh my God, we can't, it's finally May. So it's like both sides of the coin, right? So everyone, this month on Down the Garden Path, we are looking at some flowering shrubs. So it's officially shrub month, right?
It is.
A couple of classics and a couple of superstars you might be meeting for the first time. So we are looking forward to talking about those. What flowering shrubs do you have in your garden? Do you have a favorite? We would love to hear from you. Please send us your questions to instudio101@gmail.com. And tonight is one of like it's about to it seems like our timing is perfect because they're just about to come into bloom, and we're going to chat about lilacs.
Yes, lilacs is our starting shrub of the month.
That's
Ever
right.
popular in the garden centers, and there's lots of different shapes and types and hybrids out there that fit all of your needs.
Yes, absolutely. So welcome back. I know our listeners have been like putting up with just listening to me because you've been busy in school. So the semester is now over, right? And you successfully completed 2 classes.
That's right.
Good? You're good?
School's over. School is good.
It's over.
The semester is over. I would have been back last week because it was over last week as well. But of course, right after I get out of school, I got COVID. So I'm back. But that's also over as well. So COVID is gone. So yeah, we're back live finally.
Yes.
Feels like forever.
That's good. That's good. And was it good? Like, did you have a lot of fun with the kids? Kids, I say kids, and it's not like you were teaching kindergarten.
No.
You're teaching adults almost, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were anywhere from like 18 to our age and higher.
Yes. Okay.
Like I think there were 2 55-year-olds in my class.
Excellent. Oh, that's cool.
Wide range, lots of excited students going into all sorts of different things. Food and farming and horticulture and food production and landscape design and installation. It was a great mixed bag. So it's always fun checking in with them and seeing what, is catching their ear and what they're noticing and what their trends they're focusing on, because they all come from such a diverse background and have all varied interests. So it's very cool. It was very cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that would be just seeing the industry through their eyes, right? Because you've been in the industry a long time in various stages, right? And various arenas, designer, nursery, the nursery and different things like that. So it must be fun to have seen it from their perspective,
Yes, it's one of my favorite things.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, that is great. But I am happy to have you back. You know that. And I mean, I think I just missed our shows where we just you and I too, right? We've had some amazing guests. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And we had a blast last week. And and looking forward to chatting some more. And how much I love flowering shrubs too. So I did that. I say that on our Instagram post and our Twitter post about it's flowering shrubs. I love flowering shrubs. So, and I know you had said when we talked about lilacs, and I'm like, do we really have enough to talk about lilacs for an hour? And then when we went back and forth, and we're like, oh yeah, we do. we do. So that is good. So we'd love your questions, everybody. Definitely. So you have, what are lilacs? Interesting question. Yes. To start off, everybody, what are lilacs?
What are lilacs? I think everybody's heard about lilacs.
Yes.
Right? Like you said, they're nice, beautiful flowering shrubs. They're going to flower early to mid spring. They're mostly renowned for those beautiful, big panicles of very fragrant
Yes.
flowers. So everybody's probably heard of lilac.
Yeah.
Put up your hand in the audience if you haven't heard of lilac.
That's right.
Um,
You know what I would say to what are lilacs? I would say that's the only plant that most people can identify because
yes,
their grandmother, their parents, their farm they grew up on, or their neighborhood, right? Everybody had a lilac. So I think that would be the answer. Jeopardy. What are the only things that we can identify?
exactly. Well, and there's so many too. Lilacs, especially like the common lilac, for example, they are so long lived and they're such a homesteading staple for like the last 2 centuries that you can often drive out through the country and you've ever seen like just random like plantings of lilacs seemingly out in a field. Well, 100 years ago, there might have been a
Yeah.
house there or that was there 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're so long lived as well. So
Yeah.
they're
And adaptable. Like you'll find like things will grow, other things will grow in it or around it, and it just keeps growing. Like, where other plants would be like, oh no, I don't want the competition, or I don't want the shade. And like the lilac just keeps spreading or reaching or suckering, and it just keeps going.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's really tough.
They're very tough. They're actually a member of the olive family as
Really?
well. So so just a very interesting little fact there as well. So
Oh, interesting.
members of the olive
Interesting.
family.
And have people, like, I think allergies too. I think it's something, I know my husband is very allergic to lilacs. So I think that's one of the things. I don't know if it's just the pollen or the fragrance or, yeah. So
Yeah. I am not allergic to pretty much anything. So I would assume it's the pollen as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that pollen allergy.
Mm-hmm,
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So everybody knows about the big common ones. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, those big common ones. So we're going to see that North American native, that Syringa vulgaris, that common lilac. She is hardy to zone 2. So zone 2, zone 2A, so very far north. She's going to grow about 12 to 14 feet tall and anywhere from 8 to 10 feet wide. And like you said, they do sucker and they can be invasive. So they do like to spread. They do like to have multiple canes that make up that 9 or 8 to 10 feet tall wide type thing. But those suckers and those canes can continue to spread. So it is somewhat invasive and suckering in that manner. So, and that kind of gives it one of those high maintenance classifications, just our regular classic one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, sorry, I totally went out for a second. Can you tell I'm just new back?
That's okay. That's okay. I can fill in. Like, you're good.
So go ahead. Oh, pardon us as we stumble. So yes, so we have our common lilac. So these are that nice medium to light green, heart-shaped like leaf that are nice and bright green in the sun. And we get those nice big tall panicles that occur above our flower. So these guys are above our foliage. So these guys are very, very big. I just noticed that Frank also writes in, Matt, welcome back. Hi to Joanne. So glad that you're on the air. Lilacs are so beautiful and smell so great. Are they hardy for this area, the GTA? So yes, most of them are going to be hardy upwards of zone 2 to 3 and then south to zone 8 and 9. So a nice big range of hardiness as well. One of the ones that are also super popular that come from a hybridization, our cultivars from the common lilac is our French hybrid lilacs. So these are varieties that have been selected for, again, they're going to get in that zone 2 range, that zone 2 to 3 range. They're going to get anywhere from about 7 feet to 12 feet tall and anywhere usually about the same wide, so about that 8 to 10, and sometimes a little wider as well. But these guys you're going to see in the garden center, same nice medium olive green or medium bright green, heart-shaped foliage. Some of them, like Charles Jolie, for example, they can also get nice and dark foliage as well. So you're going to see some foliage differentiation in between the cultivars, but they're going to be a nice, tall, fragrant flower as well. And you'll find those in the garden center as the French hybrid lilacs. One
Yeah,
thing
and
to
their fragrance tends to be a little bit more pungent, isn't it? Is that kind of a little bit of a difference?
No, you got it for sure. Yeah. So our common one does definitely have that classic lilac smell, and it's like a good strength. You can always smell it, especially when it's in full bloom, and you catch it downwind. You're in proximity for sure. But yeah, these French hybrids have also been chosen for their colors, but also their very pungent,
Hmm.
strong smells. Yeah, so they have a beautiful, thick lilac fragrance
Yes.
throughout the different colors.
Yeah.
Most of them, I mean, that's why we buy lilacs, I think, really, is that early, you know, show of flowers first thing in the spring after especially a long winter. We're happy to see them, but they give us that beautiful scent first thing
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
spring as well. So yeah, so the French hybrid lilacs are all chosen from all of those for those that nice scent and all that wide range of color, as well as some of that medium to large landscape size plant as well. So we don't
Right.
have to have that 12 by 10 or
Yeah.
12 by 12. We can get some 7 by 6s, 7 by 8, something a little bit more medium to large
Hmm.
versus super large.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think the colors can kind of help you if you're not sure what might be in your neighborhood, because there is a bit more. I mean, the common lilac is that light purple, that lilac color that we all know about,
Yeah,
and then alba, like it tends to be a white option, white version. But then the French lilac will have almost a magenta. Charles, you mentioned Charles Jolie. It's a bit deeper, more of a pinky purple.
hmm,
Um, and then sometimes you see the Madame Lemoyne is a double white, so it's white, but and that's what it makes you kind of go, is this really a lilac? Because the flower looks a little bit different because it's a double.
it does.
Yeah. And then another one, Sensation is single, purple with a distinct white border. So that's another one that kind of stumps people, like, oh, did it cross pollinate or do it do something, So
What
those
did
are
it
just a
do?
few of the French hybrid varieties that might be in your neighborhood and that you can kind of recognize just by the color. Ludwig Spaeth is a bit more red purple. It's a
Yeah,
single with red purple colors. So yeah, so that's so not only from the scent, but also from the flower. And it's funny because I don't, when I'm doing designs, I don't know about you, I don't really do a common lilac anymore. And people don't really like, they might ask for a lilac, but they don't want the common one because of, the habit, the suckering, that type of thing. So if they definitely still want a bigger specimen, or if they have space for a bigger specimen, then definitely the French hybrids are a nice option, because they're pretty hardy and they will grow quickly and fill a space, nicely.
that's right. And just like you, I don't often end up getting into the big commons or the French hybrids unless someone already has one or they are really married to designing with one. I will definitely end up picking one of the other types and species that we'll have further down. One of the other things to mention about our French and our common hybrid lilacs is that they can sometimes delay their bloom as well. They may not want to bloom right away. So, kind of like when I'm shopping for cactus, I'll look for one that is in flower, which is usually super easy to do because the garden center brings them all in, anyways. So, if you do buy a very young plant, just be aware that after you've transplanted it, if it hasn't flowered yet, she might be taking some time to establish before she gets really
Hmm.
going. So it's good to buy one in the garden center that you do see in flower, which Most of them are, so it's not a big
Mhm.
thing. I
Yeah.
refer to cactus because some species of cactus take upwards of 50 years to bloom. So
Oh,
if you
wow.
are looking for one that does flower, always buy one that's in flower so you know that species is young enough to do it. So anyways,
Okay.
aside about cactus.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And hopefully they don't bloom only every 50 years, right?
No, right, yes. They
So
should bloom
that's good.
every year from there.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah. So how did all this? So then now we're going to talk about several of the other varieties of lilacs. And has that just been hybridizing, Matt? Like people taking the good, or scientists taking the good parts of the common lilac and then altering them?
Yeah, so they're basically cross-pollinating and cross-breeding the different species that are compatible, and then we're getting new hybrids. So where you might see Syringa vulgaris as the common lilac, you'll see the French hybrids are just Syringa vulgaris French hybrids that they've been taken for those characteristics. They've been taken to those colors. And then same thing as we get into things like our Canadian hybrid lilacs, for example. They're a cross between vulgaris and oblata. So they've been bred for, again, more colors, the pinks, the whites, the purples, the singles, the doubles, their fragrance, but they also have the same height as the common ones, but
Okay.
they're also known for more of that hardiness. So they're, again, adverse conditions, very adaptable, upwards of zone 2, which is,
Hmm.
northern Manitoba,
Yeah.
northern
Yeah.
prairie provinces kind of area. So
Yeah.
lots of cold hardiness.
Yeah, so you northern gardeners who say that you can't grow anything, you can grow a lilac. Unfortunately, they bloom for a shorter period of time, but still that they will grow, right? And
Exactly.
not with a lot, like also they're also pretty I know that they don't like fertilizing, for instance, or they don't like a lot of babying either, right?
No, exactly. Some of the care points for sure. They're going to love that full sun, at least six to
Mm,
8 hours of full sun to give them that flower power, to give them that energy to grow of direct sun. But they will tolerate a partial shade. You'll lose some of that flower, but other than that, they're really, as long as they've got some good, well-drained soils, they're pretty adaptable for your
mm-hmm.
soils going both ways. And like you said, they don't really need any fertilizing. If you do want to fertilize, you're just going to very generally fertilize them very early in the spring to promote that blooms as they're kind of growing, and even just something like a simple 10-10-10, an all-purpose kind of balanced fertilizer is all you really need. You don't need to do anything specific. And
Okay.
beyond that point, you don't need to be fertilizing anywhere late spring or after it's flowered or any time through the rest of the year as well. If you do, what you're going to end up doing is promoting a lot of vegetative growth,
Mm, mm-hmm.
and you might lose some of those buds that are going to set, which turns into our pruning
Mm-hmm.
question. Our lilacs, we're going to only prune immediately after they flower. And this is going to be true for all of them because they all set their next year's buds on the new growth that shows up through summer and into fall. So
Okay.
all that new growth, those buds are going to be there. So if you have ever had your lilac get into spring and you're like, why isn't it blooming? What's it doing? What have I done? The first question I would ask is, when was the last time you pruned it?
Yeah.
Because most people prune it for shape, because we're not going to prune it except for that, again, that late spring, right after she's done blooming, and then she kind of gets a little wild looking.
Yes. Yes. So should we clarify that to our listeners that pruning lilacs does not involve pruning shears? Or hedge trimmers. So no hedge trimmers, right? Like you see people, because it is so woody and because it
Mm-hmm.
is so tough, and it can, especially a mature one, can be a little overwhelming. And you kind of see people, so those same people that say, oh, it hasn't bloomed in a few years. Well, but I pruned it every spring, or I pruned it every winter. It's like, yeah, well, you're hacking at it with the pruning shears, and I'm doing my lovely hedge trimmer motion for Matt on
Yes.
Zoom. So I just want people to know, like, that is, even though they're tough and you're not going to kill it, but you are certainly not doing it any favors. And it really, if it's too mature for you to handle with just a hand pruner, then it really is something to call in a professional. I know we have a really beautiful one on one of the homes in our neighborhood. And after new people moved in, they appreciated it. I was so unhappy. I'm happy when people appreciate stuff like that. And they did. They had Davies trees in, and they did a beautiful like pruning of it and really restored it. And it's worth the investment in having somebody professional, because it is pretty hard. Like, it is woody, right? And some of the suckers and some of the older stems would be very hard to do with just hand shears. But it's really not in the best interest to do. And when you're driving around, and you can tell someone's trimmed it and shaped it with hedge trimmers, right?
Yes. You can see that nice, hard, even heading back for sure.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So
we have a question from Kim. Kim says, "Hi, Joanne, just writing again this week." So it sounds like Kim's been keeping you company in the questions. So thank you, Kim. Says, "Hi, Matt. I'm so glad you're doing better. Thank you. Are lilacs grown from a plant, bush, or a seed?" So going to your question as well, we're going to see all of these as bushes. Okay. We'll cross-pollinate and we'll get seeds, and then we'll get varieties, and that'll go into a whole plant breeding type thing. But yeah, so we're going to see all of our plants or bushes. They're going to be anywhere from a dwarf shrub up to a very large shrub when we get to the common ones. But they're all going to be propagated asexually. So they're all going to be taken with cuttings, unless it tends to be one variety, something like an alba or the common that comes straight to seed. But most often we're going to see them propagated that way, and they are going to be a bush or a shrub started. So you can't, Kim, for example, go into or exceptionally uncommon to go into a garden center and find lilac seeds. And if you do, you would find species seeds, like you would find Syringa vulgaris species, and that would be your big 12 by 10 classic lilac one, for example. Yeah.
And it would take a long time from seed, wouldn't it? And I think that's why it's just faster, like you said, to propagate from cuttings.
Yeah, when you propagate from cuttings, you miss all of that seed starting and all those conditions. Does it need to be stratified or vernalized, etc.? So you get to skip all of that. So it's much quicker to produce these plants. And then we know that they're genetically the exact same plant that we want.
That's cool. Yeah. So that's something, because I think a lot of people, their grandmother's house had a lilac that was special, or their parents' home has had a lilac, or a neighbor, and the new neighbors are coming in and going to clean it all out. So that is something, if you have something that's sentimental, I think of after peonies, I think lilacs are fairly sentimental things, in older established gardens. So I think that's something for people to know, that you could go and snap a cutting and go through that process of putting it in a pot. It's some, I guess you can summarize that for us too, about how you do go about it. But and that you could have, a relative of that one that's special to you for your own property. Only if you have the space, though.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you're basically propagating any of those plants. You're going to get a genetic copy of that plant. So you'll have that exact same one. So if you're doing it for any of the plants, what you want to do is just make sure that you have a very healthy plant, you have a disease-free plant, and the plant, you're taking it at the right time of year. So different plants will have different times that they are best taken for cuttings as well. So just making sure that you've always got that. And so the lilacs are more of a hardwood cutting, so you're going to take them less end of the summer, beginning of the fall, when we've got some wood forming on some of that newer growth as well. And so, yeah, and you can propagate them.
Excellent. And Jamie's written in asking, hello to Joanne and Matt. Matt, welcome back. Try to stay healthy. Yes, I'm trying to help you here, because I know it's a lot to get breathing again, right? And so Jamie's asking if our lilac bushes are expensive to buy. And they're actually pretty reasonable, aren't they?
Yeah, they are fairly reasonable, especially the ones that have been on the market for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Are common ones. A lot of the French hybrids have been around for a very long time. It's some of the newer cultivars, for example, like our Bloomerang, that have come onto the scene recently that you're going to see at your higher price point. So you can get them. I've seen them as cheap as like 12.99
Mm-hmm.
in like a 2 gallon pot, and anywhere up from them, depending on again the cultivar and the size of the plant itself at the point in which you buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anywhere from there to, and again the newer ones, again depending on the cultivar and the size of plant, up towards of 49.99, and that's I'm speaking Canadian versus American,
Yes.
Jamie, depending on where you are. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so they're fairly reasonably priced.
Yes. And you might even see especially the common ones, at a big box store in their like shrub
Yeah.
section, or I mean, other kind of smaller locations. I think you'd have to go to bigger places and with a bigger inventory to get into the French hybrids. And into some of the other unique ones that have come up lately that we're going to talk about shortly. So, right?
Especially those unique ones, those new
Yeah.
introductions that have been hitting the last 3 to 4 years, for sure. You
Yeah.
want to go to your local independent garden center. They're going to be
Yes.
the ones carrying and introducing those for you, for sure.
That's right. That's right. So, and Jim is asking if, hi, Joanne and Matt. Matt, get well. Definitely. Once planted, do lilacs really require a lot of maintenance? Because I suck at that. And yeah, I mean, it is probably one of the lowest maintenance things you can buy. I mean, the biggest factor for me is that you have the space for like one of the larger ones, that you have enough, like the sunny location, the space, but really once it's established, it does not, in fact, they prefer no TLC,
Yeah, exactly. They're very low maintenance, easy, adaptable. Again, they're going to bloom for you as long as you don't overfeed them, or prune them at the wrong time of year. So yeah, Jim, they're usually pretty easy. Again, is that light that you want if the flowers are hungry and they want that sun. So making sure you're getting that good 6 to 8 hours of consecutive full sun, quality sun, and not just like 7:30 to like noon kind of thing. You want that'll do it, but I've seen them flower a little weaker than they would have. But like quality sunlight, like not just beginning of the day or end of the day type of sun.
Right. Okay.
We're reaching the end of our first half hour. Do I get to do my thing? It's been so long.
You get to do. Can you do it? Are you okay?
I think so. I'll give it a try. My voice is a little hoarse, but thank you everyone for joining us here live on Reality Radio 101. I'm Matthew Dressing here with my co-host Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the guests that join us here on the show. Don't forget, you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Our handle there is Down the Garden Path Podcast. You can also find us on your favorite podcast provider. And while you're there, please hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content. And don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. We love hearing from our listeners. So you can always write us here in studio 101 at gmail.com. Gary, our wonderful producer, always gets us our mail. And you can always find us through our own websites. You can find Joanne at www.down2earth.ca. And you can find myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. There we go. I made it.
You made it. You made it. Well done. I thank you. I missed that. It was too hard for me to do both, so I could never get around to doing that. So thank you. Thank you very much. So we've talked about the common lilacs and we've talked about the French hybrids. How did we transition to two other popular ones? Well, let's start with the Korean lilacs. So are they actually from Asia, like from Korea?
Yeah, so they are native to northern China.
Okay.
And I say native within quotes because they've actually never been found in the wild.
Oh.
So they come from there, and they've originated out of there just from some natural crossing or crossbreeding, or someone found a seed from one to another. But yeah, so they are native to northern China in that area, but they have spread out and become one of the most popular uh, shrubs or lilacs that we have, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, and that was about around. I think it was found around about the late 1980s as well.
Oh, really? So that recent?
So
Okay.
it is
Yeah.
more of a recent one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And for me, the when at the garden center, I can kind of tell just in the sense that the leaves are a little smaller, right?
Yes, yes. They're nice, they're simple, they've got just a nice smooth edge, a classic kind of medium to dark green leaf looking color with a nice light gloss. They're only about 2 to 4 centimeters, so they're only about an inch to an inch and a half, 2 inches when they get mature, and a nice little point on the end. So
Okay.
fairly easy. I think it's
Yep.
quite nice, neat foliage, because the dwarf Korean lilac, we love it because again, it's got that nice smaller foliage, but again, that nice round, dense habit,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? She's gonna
Mm-hmm.
bloom nice and rounded, nice and dense. She's gonna bloom strongly, cover herself in beautiful flowers that can be anywhere from kind of a white or a white pink to a nice rich lilac pink color as
Excellent.
well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it was that variety that is where they started the variation of like creating a standard, right? So I believe, are they grafted onto something?
Yes.
Or are they, yes, they're not grown into that. They're grafted onto a stem. Because I think the other ones, like the French hybrids and the common ones, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're almost too aggressive, right? To be standards.
Yeah, and I've seen them as standards.
Yeah.
So I have seen like, and more so the French hybrids than just the common.
Right.
Like Charles Joly will come in a standard, Madame Lemoyne will come in a standard. And yeah, I think it's mainly
Sensation,
those two.
I think too.
And
yeah.
Sensation, thank you. I knew I was missing one more.
But I think over time they sometimes break. I don't know if it's really breaking the graft or whatever. Whereas the dwarf Korean ones definitely stay that rounded. They definitely don't. They don't even sucker, really, do they?
No.
Yes.
No, they won't sucker like the
other two.
The other ones.
Yeah.
If the head of a graft, whether it's a lilac or otherwise, starts to die, the rootstock will say, okay, hold on, I'm good, I can still live, and they will send up suckering. So if you go out and you find that any of your grafted trees or shrubs are suckering, then there's an issue there. So that's a warning sign. She's saying help. But yeah, these ones don't readily sucker like our vulgaris types. So nice, neat on a graft. You'll usually see, or I've often seen in the garden center, standard is about 3 feet. It's kind of the standard graft height. I have seen 5 feet and 4 feet as well. But I think I've seen, and maybe it was just where I was, seeing more of the 3s and a few of the 5s in the standard. So what a standard is, if you don't know what a standard is, it's basically we've taken the head of our dwarf Korean lilac, and again, using asexual propagation, we've grafted it to a compatible species that we've trained as a large trunk. And then we've cut its head off and grafted on the dwarf Korean lilac shrub. So the shrub grafts and then it grows. It's normal 4 to 5 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide if we're looking at the dwarf Korean lilac from that point that it's grafted. So a standard dwarf Korean lilac, you're going to get the height of the trunk plus you're going to get the height of that shrub.
Yeah. And we think of a lollipop, I think of, right? So often people will say to me, you know, there's a tree, my neighbor has it. I love it. I love the shape. It kind of looks like a lollipop, you know, that kind of thing. So that tends to be, you know, a dwarf Korean lilac. And it and that is one of the popular ones when I was talking about the people using a shear as you know, hedge trimmers, right? Because they think they need to make it into that circle when it really will kind of do its own thing. And that really you can, you know, the most important thing for that standard I find for that shape of a plant is that actually you have to take the pruning shears on the inside. Because what happens is, you know, then you have almost like, think of like burning bushes too, right? Where you have beautiful leaves and beautiful flowers in May, all on the outside. But if you peek inside, because it's so dense, you've got dead wood. So really, you don't need the hedge trimmers to keep it round, but you do need to kind of go in and cut and thin out a little bit, right?
Yeah, go in and look for any really old woody or just stems that aren't producing anything and get that sun to really penetrate in through there. And again, uh, she knows the shape that she wants to be and she
Mm-hmm.
will naturally do it. So that's one of my pet peeves is the a globe cedar, something
Mm-hmm.
like a danica, right? If you let a globe cedar grow, it will be a nice those, and some are denser than others. I have to put that caveat in there too. But a globe cedar will be a nice dense globe cedar one day as well. So yeah, so very
Yeah.
light to do.
Yeah. Now, the one thing is, I don't know that they are as fragrant. Like, would you say they are as fragrant, or are
Mm,
our French one? I think the French ones are the most fragrant, right?
yes, I find that the French are by far have the best fragrance. Not that the dwarf Korean lilacs don't have them, don't have that fragrance. It still smells nice, but it is not as strong and pungent, or prominent is maybe a better word, than the other ones, than your
Okay.
dwarf Korean or your other types.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Excellent.
we have a question, and Howard has written in how big do these bushes actually get? This one, the dwarf Korean, is going to be our nice first dwarf one. There's going to be about 4 by 4, 5 by 5. And I think just following up with one of our other listeners, and I'm sorry, I'm going to totally, it was Frank, I believe, talking about the hardiness. Our hardiness zone for our dwarf Korean is zone 3. So we're still hitting upwards of Winnipeg area and across. So we've still
Mm-hmm.
got some good cold hardiness.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Just sometimes I think that it's nice, the dwarf Korean in the standard is nice, ornamental, a little bit, it doesn't grow as big as the others. So it's you often see them at the front of the house, at the entrance, more of a formal type of setting. Whereas the common ones are definitely, to the side of the house or in the backyard, because they do take up so much space and are a bit more aggressive. So
Mm.
it is nice that they were able to keep something that was, a little bit more ornamental, a little bit more of a showpiece in the garden. And the cool thing about standards, and I like to use them in gardens, not just, lilac standards, hydrangea standards, a few other standards, is I love that you get the color and the flower at eye level, as opposed to like down in the ground, yet you can still put other things around the base. So I think they're a real
Yes.
versatile thing to have in a garden, but they don't become really big trees, that the head gets bigger, but the trunk that they're grafted to doesn't keep growing. It's not going to be a big tree, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to end up, yeah, that 3 foot trunk you've got is the 3 foot trunk you've got. And then the
Right.
shrub canopy starts out from there and goes up from
Mm-hmm.
there and
Yeah.
wide from there.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And then the next one is the Preston lilacs. So how I don't know much about those ones. I have to say, I have to admit.
Yeah. So they're again one of the medium-sized shrubs. So they're going to
Okay.
be anywhere from about 6 to 8 feet tall, upwards of 12 feet tall. Very upright, rounded habit, nice and hardy. Again, upwards of zone 2 and
Yeah.
3. Nice oval or elliptical long, nice dark green leaves. And they usually come in our lavenders, reds, purples, some pinks, and some whites. And they kind of look a little bit more like our dwarf Korean lilac flower, which is those long tubules that start the long tubule and then the buds start to open.
Okay.
Whereas our common lilac or our French hybrids are those panicles where the tube is very, very small, if you even notice it at all, and then we get the burst as that kind of
Okay.
opens, right? So a little bit more of a finer flower as far as it goes. But yeah,
Okay.
just another one that you'll see out there, a little bit bigger leaf than our common lilac or our French hybrid, a little bit of a darker leaf, and again we get our the different shape and that texture of that flower. But it also has a nice fragrance as well. Again, not as fragrant maybe as our French hybrids because they are beautiful for their
Hmm.
intense fragrance. But yeah, this is again another, it is a hybrid. So it's Syringa SX, Prestonianii or Prestonii. I'm going to play with my
I
Latin
let
there.
you say that. I looked at the list too and was like,
Right.
uh-oh.
But yeah, and so
uh,
they're a cross between our Reflexa species and the Villosa species. And the Villosa is actually one of the graft species that we use for another lilac we're going to talk about. And they were found in Canada to start way back
really?
in Ottawa around the 1920s.
Okay.
And
Okay.
there are some
And they seem to
great.
be men named after men. So I wondered, are they like Donald Wyman and James McFarlane? Should I know who those gentlemen are from history? Are they some, Nope. Okay, good. You don't know either.
I'm
I
not
don't know
sure who they
who
are.
they
No,
are,
yeah.
but
But
they're lucky enough to have a beautiful, fragrant shrub named after them. So there you
yeah.
go. There
and
you go.
and to be fair, there are some other ones like Agnes Smith or
Right.
Miss Canada or
Yep. Okay.
Isabella as well that have
Okay. Some lovely ladies too.
some beautiful
Okay.
ladies as well. Yes. So
Phew.
and we're going to range and again different heights. We're going to see that
Hmm.
anywhere that's 6 to 8 tall to that 10 to 12 tall, depending on that cultivar. And we're going to see reds and purples, pinks and some whites and some singles and some
Okay.
double flowers. And
Hmm.
again,
Bit more upright too, right? Because they're not
right.
as wide as the common lilac, so they're a little bit more vase shaped and a little bit more upright.
Yes.
So that's another good feature for them. So who knew, right? Because I think people so just say lilac. I want a lilac, or I like lilacs,
Yeah.
but that's why we thought this was a good show. And I think it was last year we were like, wow, we never talked about lilacs because
In
there
all the
really
time.
is. And there are a lot of people that want low maintenance. They want to be one and
Mhm.
done. And unfortunately the downfall, so this kind of is my little lead into the next one I wanted to talk about, hopefully you do too, is the downfall is that they are flower only in the spring.
Yes.
And so of course, there are some scientists out there that had to figure out how can we make a reblooming lilac, right? And how can we give it the corniest name ever, but you'll remember it in that they've come up with Bloomerang.
I always picture a big pink or purple boomerang
Yeah.
throwing
Yes.
through the air,
Yes.
covered in flowers.
Yeah. So, and I didn't believe it. And I planted one in my own garden because I wanted to see, was it true? Does it bloom a second time? And it does.
It does. And so, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and it's so weird to see a lilac blooming in September. Like I have to say, like even though you're happy that it's blooming in September, it just feels still like a bit of an anomaly that it's blooming in September. But it is
It
cool,
does.
everybody, and it is a dwarf. So it's nice that it's not like the big common or the big French hybrids or Prestons. So yeah, so what is we have here? 1 point, yeah, so like 4 feet by
Yeah, she's going to range about
yeah.
4 by 4.
Mhm.
Some of them will be more 5 by 5.
Yeah.
And then we see the classic, like the lilac or the purple. We just call it purple, and it's kind of that purple lilac classic. And then we do see a bloomerang pink, and then we see bloomerang dark purple as well. And so, yeah, we get that nice range of 4 by 4, 5 by 5. Again, a nice rounded, mounded shrub,
Mhm.
full sun, blooming on old and new wood, and anywhere from that mid to late spring,
Right.
and forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is that the difference, the fact that it blooms on new and old wood?
Yeah, it tends to grow. Yeah, it'll grow on the newer wood as well as the old wood because the
Okay.
buds from the lilacs are set in the year before, right? So
Okay.
that wood is already grown, and then we get that nice spring growth, and we get the bloom, and then we'll get that new growth again. So that's where our commons and our French and our Prestons, we want to prune right after
Okay.
that. So we don't want to damage any of that other wood. And when it comes to the bloomerang as well, we don't, and maybe you can speak to how well you did, we don't need to do a whole lot of pruning with it as well. It will do it by itself.
Will it? Okay.
It will
Okay.
do it by itself. But like the other lilacs, like again, just like our dwarf Korean, for example, just again, just lightly taking off any of the seed heads or just the spent flowers for looks.
Mm.
When we get into the bigger lilacs, they will go to seed, like the commons, they'll try to go to seed. And they may not, or the French as well, they may not be true to seed, but we do want to remove them just to divert energy. But yeah, they will do it by themselves as long as we get those good conditions as well.
What do you mean? I mean, you mean they flower by themselves without us pruning?
Right. We don't need to do
Okay.
special pruning or special feeding or any special care for bloomerangs to bloomerang.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So my experience, so because I planted a little one and then it does become a big one. So mine, I would say it's 5x5, but it's probably 5x4, you know, and I planted it close to a Japanese maple, like my butterfly green and white Japanese maple. So I've had to kind of, you know, I want to keep them separate. I don't want them growing into each other. But I have been nervous about trimming it because now I risk ruining the bloom from both seasons, right? So is there a trick? Like I have looked up this and I've kind of, sometimes you just have to prune out of necessity and whether I did it the right way or not, right?
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I think for that situation, and if you end up in that kind of thing, it does just come down to that maintenance pruning later in the year. Something's in the way. Yeah, I don't want to do it because it will give you flowers, but it's also going to start to push out somebody else, or it's kind of ruining that aesthetic or why I have it there. Like, or if it's interfering with a driveway, or for you, it's going into your Japanese maple. Yeah, all you can do is really just kind of lightly shear it what you can, and no, you'll probably lose some for sure in the spring show. But if it's on the one side that's facing the Japanese maple, and you may not see it, I mean, if it's facing the road, or maybe facing, you know, the back of something, it might not be as a big deal. But if it is from a good sight line, or a desired view, you might have half a ball of no flowers to keep her in bad shape.
Yeah. Now, because so this one is a little less hardy, right? Zone 4, and that's my notes in front of me.
Yes, exactly. This one, we're going to lose a little bit of that zone. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, would they, like going back to the other really hardy ones, they probably could survive in a large container if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
You know, it will eventually disintegrate, like it'll outlive the container, you know, and it obviously has to be a winter hardy container type of thing. But that is an option for sometimes I think people are like want to give a gift or have a spot on their patio where they need some privacy and they want something that'll get taller than annuals do. You know, a lilac, you know, I think of things like lilac, sumac, curly willow, like that are fairly aggressive and fairly hardy, very hardy. And they'll survive, you know, at least 4 or 5 seasons, you know, kind of. You're lucky, right? It doesn't owe you anything if that's all you get from them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But do you think you could grow a bloomerang in a pot though? Probably not to winter it, right?
I would worry about the winter. If you started with a very large pot, just the freeze thaw cycle would have to travel in so far to those roots.
Yeah.
And it would probably refroze during that thaw by the time the thaw got all the way in from the sides that really get it. Because it's the freezing and the thawing on the sides of containers that really get into working up and damaging our roots. I mean, you could try it again, microclimates, everybody's houses.
Yes. Yeah.
But I always go for the hardy stuff.
Hardy ones. Yeah.
Right. The stuff that is borderline invasive or really likes to grow quickly. Or again, if you put a perennial in that container, pick something that's 2 zones cooler or cold hardy than what zone you're in. So pick something zone 3 and 2 to leave in that container and try. But yeah, for sure, those other ones would do for sure.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, so to use them, like I think bloomerang, the fragrant, I would say it does repeat bloom in that August, September, you know, time frame. It isn't as fragrant as it is in the spring, but I think it's okay. Like I think it's, you know, there's not, after hydrangeas, there's not a ton of shrubs that bloom at that, like it's September, right? And that are that size. So I think it's really, I think there's a place in almost every garden, as long as you've got the sun for it. I think it's a good good backdrop, having something else in front of it, that type of thing. So I think it's exciting. And I noticed, it was last year that I noticed it the most, and I've seen them on the list for this year, is then they have also made them into standards. So they've grafted them.
Yes.
They've been around long enough now that they've been able to figure out to graft them onto stems. So you can have that same look of a Miss Kim or a Palabin, dwarf Korean lilac on a standard, but now you get the repeat blooming of a bloomerang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I know I haven't seen one yet, but I put them in some designs.
Yes.
So, have you seen them?
I haven't seen them in person, but I've seen them again on the lists of things. It's like,
yes,
it's
on our list.
It's done.
Yeah, we can do it. So yeah, so that is great. So that, so it's really cool that there is a true re-blooming lilac and called Bloomerang, and the boomerang. So that's really exciting. So I think that kind of caps off all of our lilacs. Yeah.
One thing I would say from garden center experience would be, if you are looking for a white lilac, there's the tree. We didn't talk about our
Japanese, right?
Japanese tree lilac. Yeah. Our Syringa reticulata. So it is the tree form. It's not one of the shrub forms. It blooms later in that June time.
Yeah.
June, July. If she gets very big, we see her as a street tree.
Mm-hmm.
Garden center people tend to, or when you're looking for them in the garden center, most people see that one and go, can I get a white lilac? Mm-hmm. That's the one most people are referring to. If you do want a white shrub form, now is the time when you go in early to mid-spring and find your shrub lilac. Go find the white one. Because most people, I want a white lilac, they will take you to the shrubs versus the tree. So just be aware, there is that white lilac that's a tree that blooms later in the year. So if that's the one you want.
Are they available now?
Yeah, you'll find them now in the garden center as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So they're often ivory silk lilacs. Japanese lilacs is what they're called. And they do come as a single stem tree. Often, you do see them and service berries as street trees, because they get big, but they get they're not a maple tree. Like they get 12, 15, they get a nice size. Yeah. But they do, and it's harder to find them as a designer, but I love them. I know not everybody does. I know Nancy doesn't like them, but they come multi-stemmed as well, much like service berries. So they come, single trunk, but you can also get them multi-stemmed.
Right.
But they're still, even though they're multi-stemmed, they still bloom in June, and they still are a different flower, much, much fuller flower, a much different flower than the common lilacs, the syringa, vulgaris, and all the different varieties. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And
so good point. So thank you for reminding us about that one.
Oh yeah, no problem. I realized I didn't put it on our list to talk about either. But yeah, so this is a street tree one, and she's going to get 20 to 30 feet tall, depending on where she is. Zone 3, so she's hardy, native to Japan. Again, full sun, seen as a street tree. 15 to 18 feet wide, depending on, again, where you are and whatever. So yes, just one last one to throw in there. As we're getting close to the very end of the show, and we do have a few last.
Yes, but I do want to talk about our book. So when you want to answer these questions really quick, and then we can sign off, giving everybody a little update. What do you think?
I agree. So first we have Tommy. Hi, J&M. Safe for pets. Yes, there is nothing known for the lilacs that are toxic, skin irritant, anything. The only thing I would look out for, as far as like a pest go, rabbits like to eat them. So as far as things eating them, rabbits might be nibbling around the base for sure. Larry's also written in colors, a lot of colors. When you purchase a bush, do you know what colors these are, or is it a surprise? No, they'll all be tagged with their cultivar name, Ludwig Spade, Madame Lemoyne, and they'll often have just a picture of the flowers itself, so you know what you're getting, because everybody's buying it for colors and that beauty. So yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Lastly, Karen rounds out all of our questions with excellent show tonight, Joanne and Matthew. Well, thank you, Karen. Matt, get better. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice because everybody says my voice sounds like I'm sick all the time anyways. But but thank you. And happy growing, folks. And happy growing to you too, Karen.
Yeah, and enjoy if you're lucky enough to have a lilac in your neighborhood or in your yard. Now you can maybe look at it a little differently now that we've given you some more information. Or if you need one for your garden, you can refer to this information so that you're choosing the perfect one. And we do talk a bit about trimming and pruning and all kinds of things gardening, don't we? And our upcoming book, Down the Garden Path, by the same name as our show here.
That's right. Do we have, what's the official title? It is, oh goodness, because I don't have it open. Oh, because we were jumping back and forth about it.
Yes. Well, we knew the title was Down the Garden Path, step by step through the Ontario garden, I believe. Isn't that close to it?
Step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden.
There you go. There you go. But we don't want to, the Americans, you guys, like, we're not leaving you out, right? It's the same zone. So if there's zone 5, and we kind of have that in our inside, right? We talk about that.
Exactly. And to think too, your calendar, if you're in a warmer zone, things are going to start earlier and go a little longer. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see a lot of the same plants, a lot of the same pruning techniques, everything that you really need to know, but you might have a longer season that starts earlier. So despite calling it our Ontario garden, much like our Toronto Botanic or our Toronto Gardener's Journal that we talked about earlier, it's geared to a little bit of everybody, no matter where you are.
That's right.
That is going to be released. We don't have a solid date. However, we are fairly positive you'll be able to pick it up on Amazon by the May 2-4 long weekend, our Victoria Day. And we're crossing our fingers, but that's like our earliest that we have so far.
Yeah, so we tried for Mother's Day, but we couldn't pull that one off. But that's okay. We wanted to be right, and we wanted to be proud of it. And we are working hard on it, even though we have other jobs, right? We're not full-time writers, so that's like, I think, the biggest thing that no one told us when we started this project was that it does take some time. So we're excited. We thank Gary for this opportunity to have this stage or whatever, this platform.
Thank you.
That's right. That's the word. To be able to talk gardening, right, Gary?
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. Thank you.
So we're very excited. We'll watch for social media. So we're going to give you some updates, sneak peek at the cover soon. So I know Matt gave you all of those, our social media, but Instagram, Matt, what are go ahead.
Take a look at Down the Garden Path podcast. We'll be posting it there soon. Don't forget to also follow us as well at Nat Affinity on Twitter, or Natural Affinity Designs on Instagram, and Joanne at Down to Earth on Instagram. I think yours confuses me.
I know. Joanne _D2E.
Thank you.
And our Facebook group. So I know we don't have a massive Facebook group. We'd love you to join and be part of the conversation there. We've been getting some really good questions lately. And we'll definitely, debut our cover and some details there. So yeah.
That's right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much for the warm welcome back from all of our listeners.
Mm-hmm. And next week, what are we doing next week? Before you sign off.
Stay tuned, because we're going to talk all about viburnums.
Viburnums.
A wicked group of flowering shrubs of all different shapes and sizes as well. So thanks for tuning in. We look forward to talking to you next week here Down the Garden Path on Reality Radio 101.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.